And Barak said to her, if you go with me, then I will go. And if you will not go with me, I will not go. Yikes. Hello and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark. And thank you so much for stopping by as we get a little bit into God's Word. We are continuing in this series, A Walk Through the Bible, or Characters in the Bible. And we are in Book 2, Lesson 26. And we're going to be reading from Judges chapter 4. So as I've pointed out the last two times, we are past the life of Moses. We are past now the life of Joshua even, and now we are into the time of the judges. And this is a time that's going to happen for some time before we get into the kings. And this is simply how God ruled his people. He rules people through these judges, and God is fine with that. He's fine with just having people come up that can help deliver Israel when they get into trouble, because they can't stay out of trouble. And as I always say, that doesn't happen so we can criticize Israel. That happens because that's what we do. And I know that I say that, and a lot of us probably think, no, I don't. Well, you know, if you don't do that, you probably do something else. And that's the truth of the matter, because not every one of us, none of us get it right completely. We all fall short of the glory of God, and we all need the Christ, and that's why we study these things. Okay, so we're going to read chapter 4 in its entirety, starting at verse 1. And the sons of Israel did evil again in the sight of Jehovah when Ehud was dead. And Jehovah sold them into the land of Jabin, king of Canaan, who ruled in Hazor. And his army commander was Sisera, and he lived in Harosheth of the nations. And the sons of Israel cried to Jehovah, for he had 900 chariots of iron. And he mightily oppressed the sons of Israel 20 years. And Deborah, the wife of Lebedoth, a woman prophetess, was judging Israel at the time. And she lived under the palm tree of Deborah. Interesting. Between Ramah and Bethel and the hills of Ephraim. And the sons of Israel went up to her for judgment. Interesting. And she sent and called for Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, has not Jehovah, the God of Israel, commanded? Go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun with you. In other words, Barak, why aren't you doing this? God has already told you to do this. All right? And I will draw to you at the Kishon River Sisera, the army commander of Jabin, and his chariots and his multitude, and shall give him into your hands. And Barak said to her, if you go with me, then I will go. And if you will not go with me, I will not go. Yikes. And she said, I will certainly go with you. Only your glory shall surely not be on the way which you are going. For Jehovah shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Deborah rose up and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together to Kadesh, and went up with 10,000 men at his feet. And Deborah went up with him. And Heber the Kenite had broken away from the Kenites, he being of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses. And that's an important point right now. So you've got a guy who's a dissident from the Kenites. And he pitched his tent by the oak in Zaanannim, near Kadesh. And they told Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. And Sisera mustered all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the people with him, from Harosheth of the nations to the Kishon River. So he's got all of his heavy gear to fight this fight. And Deborah said to Barak, rise up, for this is the day in which Jehovah has given Sisera into your hand. Has not Jehovah gone out before you? And Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. And Jehovah routed Sisera and all the chariots. Wow, that's amazing. And all the army by the mouth of the sword before Barak. And Sisera came down from the chariot and fled on his feet. And Barak pursued the chariots and went after the army to Harosheth of the nations, and all the army of Sisera fell by the mouth of the sword. There was not even one left. And Sisera fled on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. There's that Kenite guy. For there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not fear. And he turned into her tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a skin of milk and gave him drink and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the door of the tent, and if anyone comes in and asks you and says, is there a man there? You shall say, there is not. And Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand and went to him quietly. And she drove the peg into his temple, and she beat it into the ground. And he had been fast asleep and faint, and he died. And behold, as Barak followed Sisera, Jael came out to meet him and said to him, come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking. And he came to her, and behold, Sisera had fallen dead with the peg in his temple. And on that day God humbled Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the sons of Israel. And the hand of the sons of Israel went on, going on and pressing hard on Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they cut off Jabin, the king of Canaan. So a victory. Okay, so now here we are in this time of the judges, and there's this woman who is the judge. Her name is Deborah, and we're going to talk a little bit about the what does that mean? You know, what's going on? Is there any other meaning other than just she's a judge? So who is Jabin? Well, Jabin is a king who's oppressing Israel, and Sisera is his commander. And Sisera has these 900 chariots of iron, and that was a big deal in those days. Okay, that's heavy armor, and most people could tell you who know about ancient battles that if you had these heavy, this heavy type of equipment, and you had the right type of terrain, if you were just even on a horse, a lot of times you had the advantage over people. You were up higher. You could run over people with your horses and that sort of thing, and people were just afraid of them. So we see, as is a lot of times the case, the better technology will win the battle. But these people are supposed to be God's people, and God is going to go before them. And so this is a big deal, right? They're supposed to know this and remember this. So why don't they know it? That's the big question. So who is Deborah? Well, Deborah is the assigned judge, so she's the judge assigned by God to the people of Israel. She's a prophetess. Barak is some sort of warrior. Now, I'm not going to disparage women because that's not what I'm doing. But to have a woman come save the day was an embarrassment for the men of the day. Now, it doesn't mean that she was less of a person, but that was the attitude about women in those days, was like they're just, women just need to stay out of things, and they need to, they need to do what they're supposed to do, and having this, having a woman who's a prophet is a big deal. Were there no men that were qualified? Was there no man that God could rely on? And when we see her speaking with Barak, we see that there's problems going on here. There's a lack of faith with people. Again, this is a repeated pattern over and over. There's a lack of faith of God with people. Okay, so what's wrong with Barak's answer in 8? Well, first, Deborah makes it clear that God has already said, you need to go do this, and he hasn't done anything. She's like, hasn't God said, go do it, and I'll bring, she's saying, I'll bring the Sisera's army. And he says, I'm not going to go unless you go. That's the second part. It's like, what? So he obviously has faith in her, but he lacks the correct faith in God. But because in this instance, God is trying to get the heart of these people. He's showing them, look, I will deliver you. I will deliver you. And so through the prophetess Deborah, his word comes to pass. So it's important to see that with so many stories, even though we see people have this great faith, that faith ends up waning after generations. And as we've said before, it only takes one generation. That's all it took. That's all it took. After all the people died who were having good influences on Joshua, and Joshua dies and all this, after those people die, the people end up they start committing idolatry. And so it happens very quickly, and this is a main message of the Old Testament. Be on guard. You have to guard your faith. You have to grow your faith. You have to pay attention to it. You have to nurture it. That's just the reality of it. Just going to church doesn't do it. Going to church is good, but going to church doesn't mean that you're growing your faith either, right? If you go to church but you're never reading your scriptures, that's not helping you a lot. Okay. Yeah, well, what was, what should have been his answer? Well, his answer should have been, yes, we're going. I know God said, here's my plan. I've already made the plan. I'm already doing it. But he isn't there. And it shows his problem, his own problem with the lack of faith, especially when he says, I'm not going to go unless you go. So can we sometimes have that attitude? Well, of course we can. And that is why the story is in here, because it's human nature sometimes to have a lack of faith in some things, right? We do it all the time, right? People do it all the time. We know that all governments answer to God. We know that. Now, a lot of governments don't think they do, and they do all kinds of crazy things. But we know that governments are established by God, and they answer to God. And yet so many times when we start, during election years or whatever, we start freaking out and, why did that guy become president? Or why did this person become governor? Isn't God watching? It's like, just have faith in God and continue to do good. Continue to move forward. And this is the thing. And I'm not saying we trust God to boot people out of office. I'm just saying that no matter what happens, our faith needs to be on him. and not on the terrible life that we think that we have, even though we don't, right? Ultimately, right? Ultimately, we have nice homes, and we have dinner every night. We have running water, all those things. Okay, how complete is this victory? There's not even one of the enemies left, so it's a complete victory. And just like Deborah prophesied, the glory to the killing of the commander goes to a woman. It goes to Jael, and there's a lot that you can say about Jael. That she obviously was aligned with Israel and with Israel's God, and when it came time to dispatch Sisera, she didn't feign away. She just did it. I mean, I don't know that I could do something like that, but she was a great warrior as well as a faithful servant to Israel anyway. I don't know if she believed in God. I'm assuming she did. So what were some of the tough things that Deborah and Jael had to do? Well, Deborah goes into the battle. She goes to the battle. And she goes to Barak even and says, I mean, here's a woman telling this guy, right? In that day and age. You know, today we wouldn't think twice that a woman might have a place of authority to tell men what to do. But back in those days, it didn't happen very often. She's going to this warrior telling him, you need to go fight. God told you to go fight. Now go do it. And she doesn't pull any punches with this guy. And Jael, she outwits Sisera. You know, she gives him milk instead of water, and he falls asleep, and she ends up killing him. So she has to make a decision here, right? And she sides with God and with Israel. And it's no small thing what she did. It is really a great act of faith. So list some of the tough things we need to do as followers of Christ. And that is one of the things that, again, happens throughout the scriptures. People who want to follow God, and in our day, people who follow Christ because we want to be followers of God, we can find some tough things in our lives because of that. You know, becoming a Christian doesn't mean you're going to have an easy life. God doesn't promise you an easy life if you become a Christian. And when you hear preachers talk about that, especially these, they preach about, getting wealth and stuff. Hello? Then why did those first century Christians die? Why were they burned alive? Why were they murdered, hand over fist? People dragged out of their homes and killed right on the spot. Why? God doesn't promise any of that stuff. That's not God's promise. God's promises has more to do with our spiritual life. It has everything to do with our spiritual life. It's not about getting stuff. But if you become a Christian, you might get resistance from your own family. You might get resistance from your friends. Maybe your friends will not be your friends anymore. Maybe they choose not to be your friends. Maybe your family says, I don't want to be around you. Maybe your wife or your husband doesn't want to be around you if you decide you want to be a Christian. That would be a real tough life. But what's more important, right? I think our souls are at stake here. That's what we're talking about. So people ridicule Christians with no filter these days. That's one of the things I try to emphasize to young people. Look at, becoming a Christian is not easy. It's far more rewarding than anything else the world has to offer. But people will ridicule you with no filter. They have no problem telling you you're stupid. You believe in God. Oh, you probably believe in the Easter Bunny. That's what they'll tell you. And I always laugh at that because it's like, yeah, well, I don't know what you believe, but whatever it is, it's taking you a religion and a faith to get there. That is no lie. That's the truth of the matter. People don't like, a lot of times, they don't like people. They don't like the Bible, and they don't like it when people believe the Bible, so they don't like you. Oh well, what are you going to do? Life is not a popularity contest. It's really not. Not when you think about the paradigm and the revelation of what God has brought to the table. He says, I made you an immortal being, and I want you to be here with me when you leave that body that you're in right now. That's what he's doing here. So, in this time where we see Israel messing up and then God having to send them somebody to deliver them, it's a foreshadowing of the final deliverance of Jesus. That's the final time. That's all there is. There's no more. Nothing else is going to happen, right? God isn't going to send another deliverer. Jesus is it. He's the last of the line. And the scriptures, the New Testament scriptures talk about that. If you reject the Holy Spirit, this was Jesus saying, if you reject the Holy Spirit, there's nothing left for you. It's over. Anyway, so we're going to get into the next one. We're going to still be in Judges, I think. I'm pretty sure we've got a few more people in Judges. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 more lessons, and then we'll get into book 3. Thank you so much for stopping by. See you later.